So here we're going to talk about obviously the normal benefits of being organized, which is something that we all could use help with as a means to improve our financial lives. Okay. So here was an interesting little quiz that I learned about. How many items does the average American lose in one day? Any guesses?
5.
I lose the same thing 4 or 5 times a day.
Right. Supposedly, I guess the answer didn't come up here, but I was trying to screen up for it. Supposedly the answer is 9. That it could be small things like, you know, your list when you were going to go to the grocery store, or, you know, a piece of paper that you wrote a phone number down of a friend that you were going to call back. But that's what their statistics showed. Even 4 or 5 to me would be too many because, you know, clearly we waste a lot of time in going through those items. And that's really what we're trying to avoid here. Okay, there we go. We know that being organized saves time, saves control over your schedule, frees you up for other things, and also helps avoid procrastination. So this isn't going to be a lecture on organization because we're going to move to the Lifefolio, but there are clear benefits in being more organized. And one of the biggest is the stress relief you get, the brain overload, you're thinking about too many things. I don't know how many of you do this. I've now find myself using my notes on my phone. There's like a little notes tab that you can put your notes in. So when I'm going out, I always have my phone. I now put my notes in the phone. So that's the whole idea, is to try and avoid those conflicts. And worse is obviously when it happens when something bad goes on. So one of the things that business leaders were asked is how much time they even lose to productivity. And they stated that they lose as much as 6 hours a week. And the statistics prove that if that's also true for employees, that adds up to a lot of money. So that's what we're going to try and avoid. There was also a study out showing that 59% said they were stressed about finances. But one of the things that gets you stressed about finances is not even understanding your finances or your financial position. And so it's interesting, the two of you are on here, and I know that from experience, the two of you are better than many other clients. So staying organized obviously helps save from wasting money for things as mundane as late fees from forgetting to pay your electric bill on time, or being late on a credit card, or things like that. This is a pretty funny statement. I'll let you read this here. Does anybody know who Alan Alexander is? Milne, do you know who he is?
Nope.
Andrew, you may know. He's the author of Winnie the Pooh. So he took that as a means to find some surprising insights. And that may be true if somebody, you know, all of a sudden left you an inheritance that you weren't aware of. That'd be a nice surprise. But getting something that's not so good, finding a bill that you didn't pay and now you're overdue on, and you're getting you know, sheriff's notices about being late, wouldn't be so much fun. So, you know, one of the things that I found with my wife is that, you know, we talk about some of these things, but we often don't do them, like planning out for, you know, your future and what you would want to have happen and where things are. And this may be not with a spouse, but it could also be with your kids, like making sure they're aware of where things are so that if something were to happen to either one of you, they'll be able to access that without a problem. These are some of the things we all go through. In fact, I'm in the midst of a refi now, and they're constantly asking me for something else, and I have to constantly dig through it. Fortunately, I'm reasonably organized, but it still takes time. Credit report discrepancies is another issue I've seen being a problem. So we can all see why this is valuable. We're going to go over the Lifefolio checklist in a minute, but there's a lot of great tools right in here, and I'm going to start with some of them. So on one of the first pages they'll have, and I don't know if you can see this well enough, but it may be a little clearer when I get to the actual Lifefolio, which we will send you after this, is things like knowing where your Social Security card is, your birth certificate, your passport, your driver's license. etc. Now, most can put their hands on the original, but how many of you have made copies of these and keep those copies in a place just in case you lose the originals? Jeff has. All right, I'm glad to see it. Well, you're a step ahead of most people, but that is definitely something, a big plus that you're doing. The same for any of these things. One thing that I found in the past that some people misplace is they have a safety deposit box, but do they have a spare key for the safety deposit box? You know, you need a backup on your backup sometimes.
I thought they didn't let you make a spare key.
Well, I'm talking about a box in your own home, like your own box. You're right. In the bank, maybe not, but they have a key for you. One thing that's interesting about safety deposit boxes in banks, and you may not be aware of this, but if someone were to pass away and the bank finds out about it, they lock your safety deposit box up until they get a court order indicating who's supposed to have access. So we recommend, for instance, not putting your will in that safety deposit box. Otherwise, you can't prove who's supposed to be in charge. So I would say this: if you know someone who's sick or someone who you're close with and they have a safety deposit box, you may want to have a discussion with them about that very issue and pull out something from the box that may be very important in the near future, like their will.
Like a power of attorney isn't good enough?
A power of attorney can help, but it can probably get you that access, but I wouldn't take a chance. So it's highly recommended that you don't keep your only copy of a will, for instance, in a safety deposit box.
David,
Yes.
I found out when Judy passed away that according to a lot of people, they said that the power of attorney is no good once they've died.
That's right. That's a very good point. The power of attorney generally does die because it's only during the life of that person.
Yeah.
So again, if they were sick, you would have a right to go and pull out of their safety deposit box anything because you have power of attorney. But once they pass, then all of that turns to the executor or executrix of their will. So that is a very valid statement you just made. So on this page here are some important documents. Clearly, you want to have your investments or your investment information kept in an important place. And one of the things we have found when people go through this exercise, when we ask them about company retirement plans, many people have worked at multiple locations and therefore have multiple 401ks or similar retirement accounts. And they haven't moved them all over to one source. So this is a great time to go back and review and make sure there's not an old statement or an old account that you haven't brought into the fold so that you can keep better track of it. The same thing holds true with stock certificates or any sort of what are called bearer bonds. These are actual bonds that you hold. They're not always good to be held in your own possession because if they got lost, there was a fire, there was anything else like that, then it's hard to prove that you actually own shares in that company. Better is to then move it into a brokerage account that we could do for you so that then you don't have to have physical access of those holdings. Okay. This is hard to read. I'm not sure if I can expand it or not. But I can tell you that some of the things are on here are things like your beneficiaries. This is also going to be a good time to update your beneficiaries and make sure that they're all in order. Because there are times we've seen that that has been a problem. Okay. So this goes down to the same thing. Sometimes you'll see things on here that you're not aware of or don't even understand. We understand what a living will is. That's a healthcare proxy that allows you to make decisions for loved ones. A durable power of attorney is actually different. That's for business matters and financial matters. So they are two separate items, and therefore you really should have both for yourself. And those are the types of things that you could upload onto our website into our AdviceWorks program. So the will, as I was talking about, there's a couple places it should be kept. One is with the attorney who you want your family to use. And then the second would be in some sort of fireproof box at home. Now, we also recommend, there's about halfway down this page, you'll see some sort of letter of instructions, also charitable donations. This is in a box you could keep. These are called emergency papers, burial instructions. Maybe you purchased a cemetery plot. You want to have that deed. Any sort of other information on how you want yourself prepared, whether it's to be cremated or otherwise. Although these things are difficult sometimes to think about, it's important to do. It's also important to let your loved ones know what you have done, even if they don't want to hear about it. They may say, I don't want to talk about it. It's still important. So at least if you have a box with all these papers, and I like this one here, the letter of instructions that gives more detailed information on how to do things. Like you may even tell them, go to my safety deposit box before you tell anyone. As far as the death certificate goes, that's something they'll have to order. But if it was for another loved one, that you've kept for them just in case, the emergency lockbox, fireproof lockbox is a good place to have that. So what we're really talking about is creating a customized home filing system. And in here, you would have all of the items that we've talked about, all the important documents, and it should be filed in a fireproof box. It shouldn't be held just in a regular old filing cabinet that couldn't survive a file. And secondly, as I mentioned, you want to upload those things onto our site. And lastly, you could even consider making copies and putting them outside of your home, either in that safety deposit box or maybe with a loved one, like one of your children. Okay. So these are some of the topics that you would have inside that filing system. You're going to keep the checklist, which we're going to review in a second. The emergency contact items, this is very important. Like, who are your advisors besides me that are going to be on there? Your attorney, a banker maybe, a property and casualty broker, your accountant. All of their personal information, or let not say that, their contact information should be kept in a place where a loved one could easily access it. The same with the rest of this information that's going to be pertinent for you. Medical records is another one that's good, especially, if you got sick, they'd want to have access to know what you're allergic to, et cetera. Obviously, insurance policies, property and casualty policies as well, any other legal documents besides your will, like a trust, and et cetera. Credit card information is good because you're going to want your children to cancel those credit cards. So it's a lot easier if they can do that by having access. This also is a good time to review things like insurance. Not only life insurance, it can be property insurance, it could be flood insurance, depending where you live, fire insurance, car insurance. This is always a good time to do a review. And the same thing applies to looking at your will, making sure that is, current, your beneficiary designations, as I mentioned earlier, and any other strategies or things that you want to have happen. So, you're the center of your own world, and these are all of your key persons around them who you need to have help you. So, let me just skip ahead here a little bit. Clearly, when you're looking at your will, these are the decisions that you'll be looking at. Who's going to take care of any, minor children if you have them, but if not, are your children old enough to inherit your money? So you have to look. You might have set a trust up at one time. It may not be valid anymore. You want to get rid of these unnecessary documents. It's kind of like decluttering your will and your other affairs. Okay. So when we go to customize your financial strategy, these are the things that, of course, I talk with you about. But it's also important for us to be aware of things like your bank accounts and maybe investment accounts that are held elsewhere. You want to bring as much in as possible. And that's another nice thing about our AdviceWorks software. You can link outside accounts. You can link outside liabilities. You can also upload onto there your tax return. And if there's any other personal notes you want to put on there, you would put that in there as well. So this is all about regaining organizational control. So I know I've been moving pretty quick. I'm going to bring up the life folio itself, but are there any questions up till now? Okay, very good. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And now I'm going to shrink this again and bring up the next piece. Whoops. Let's see how to do this. Okay. Let me see if I've done it right. All right. So we should have the like folio checklist right in front of you. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is given to us by New York Life. They've done a really good job of putting this together. I'm not going to need to do a commercial for them. They're a good company that we use when they fit into your situations. But you can see right on the top here, the first thing is key contacts. You can list everybody right in this one place. You can put all your emergency papers right in here, where you've located these things. Where's your social security card? Where's your birth certificate, etc. So this is really a good thing just to check off the box on the left and put the information on the right for each of these things that you have for whatever you're involved in. Right here, the same way with your emergency papers, where you keep your life insurance or other documents or any of your health insurance or your Medicare cards or anything at all. This also is a good place to list things like your inventory for valuable items. I'll give you a good idea on that. If you have any jewelry or other personal items around the house, two things you can do. One is you can take either a video or photos of them. That would be good for insurance purposes. Put them with any appraisals you have. And then you can also put a note with it, like in that letter of instruction, who's to get what. Like if you have some valuable paintings and you know one of your children likes them more than the other, well, you can say that would be for them. Or maybe you're going to give it to a charity or maybe a cousin. These are the things that you want to list separately out of your items in your home that they have some value to somebody else. So all of these things are good things to check on. Your title papers for your cars. We tend to keep them in one place, but they're also good to be made copies of and also to be uploaded onto our site. That's what I would recommend. And you'll find some things in here that you realize you haven't taken care of, and that's part of it. It could be some of the final plans, whether it's funeral arrangements or cemetery plots or anything like that, or donations to charity at the end. I know, Sherilyn, I know we've talked about that. You've done some of that, but not everybody has, and there may be more that you want to do, and this is a good time to look at it. So that's really pretty much a summary of the this checklist and the folio that I wanted to go over with you. During the pandemic, this has all given us cause and all given us time to look and maybe do some things a little differently. It also has given us probably more time on our hands than we normally have. So this is a good opportunity to get organized, not only in your home, but with your financial home. So I hope you've gotten some benefit out of this. Anne Marie will be sending the two of you this life folio. It will be on our website along with the seminar. But as you go through it, if you see things that you want to discuss with us, please reach out to us and we'll review them with you and either give you suggestions on what to do or point you in the right direction.